As Connor said, I am this guy. That's who I am, the totally obsessed time management guy. I've spent the last 20 years sort of becoming known as this guy. First 14 years for organizations like Procter & Gamble, Michigan State University, and the Fetzer Institute, where I held relatively high-level professional positions. My coworkers in each of these organizations said that because I am so over the top on this stuff, that one of these days I ought to get out and do something with it. So about 6 years ago, I decided to go out in private practice and have had the opportunity to go all over the United States, Canada, and Europe talking on these topics. So, and what's interesting is if you were in my first session, you'll know that if you're over the top obsessed with anything, there's always a victim, isn't there? Somebody who has to suffer because of your obsessive behaviors. I'm one of those guys. Anybody in here does this number? Every time I get in the car to drive anywhere, I try to figure out the path with the least number of stoplights. Anybody in here do that number? I'm that guy, yeah. It drives my wife crazy. She'll go, will you just drive the normal way? And I'm like, no, trust me, I can save a couple minutes. Recently read the average American spends about 6 months of their life just sitting at stoplights. I'm trying to get about 2 of those months back for me. I'm also one of these people. How many in here have their smartphone with them here at the conference? iPhone, BlackBerry, Droid, whatever your choices. This is my relatively new BlackBerry Tour. Randy likey very much. This is a great little phone. And people always ask me all the time, well, what do you recommend? Droid, BlackBerry, iPhone? I think the question is sort of related to what you're using in terms of your software program. I'm using Outlook as a primary software tool right now. BlackBerry and Palm synchronize perfectly with Outlook. And I think that should be a driving choice for what you're thinking about. I get people all the time in my session saying, how come my iPhone doesn't work with my Outlook all the way? And I always say, Apple, Microsoft. Yeah, they don't like each other too much. And there's a reason behind that. What's interesting is, related to this, everything I'm showing you today, all this information that I'm doing with my Outlook, it's going to come over onto this thing, right? And so I can actually have pretty much everything I'm doing here in Outlook on here too, which obviously has some really nice benefits because that means that wherever I'm at, I have my data. Watch for what's coming in the wave. I'm working on a new thing right now, which is basically the same stuff we're talking about in this program, but instead on Google applications, because I think that's where a lot of people are going to start heading in the next couple of years. So watch for that, because that way it doesn't matter what platform you're on, iPhone, iPad, Mac, PC, Droid, BlackBerry, you can get your stuff. And so look for that to develop over here the next couple of years. But what's sort of fun about this is this is my third BlackBerry. I remember the day I walked in with my first one. I come into my house all excited because it was my first smartphone. I used to use the Palm PDAs, but they weren't smartphones yet. And it was my first smartphone, meaning I had email and internet. And I was so excited. Come walking into my house, I go, hey, hon, check it out, I got my new BlackBerry. And I thought my wife would be excited too. I got a slightly different response. All right. Now, to give you a little backstory about my wife, MBA CPA at manager level in her firm, bit of a power hitter. So when she talks about this stuff, you might want to listen. Not the kind of person to give ultimatums, though. I've only had 2 ultimatums in our 13-year relationship, both related to this. Here's what happened. I can walk in and I go, hey, hon, check it out, got my new BlackBerry. She looks at me, she goes, does her best Clint Eastwood. Ooh. I don't like those crackberries. That's what she calls them, crackberries, right? And you know why? Because some people are 24/7, 365 with these things, right? You'll see them walking down hallways, running into people because they're not paying attention. You'll see them in meetings doing the BlackBerry or the iPhone or the Droid prayer. Have you ever seen this? Here's the prayer. Right while they're in the meeting. I was even heading down to Pittsburgh a couple months ago to go lead a session at one of the universities down there, and I couldn't get the right flight out of East Lansing, so I drove down the Ohio Turnpike. 11 a.m. in the morning, I'm driving down the client thing. I got this guy, 11 a.m., far left lane of the Ohio Turnpike doing one of these numbers. Side to side, speeding up, slowing down. I'm like, this guy drunk? It's 11 a.m. He finally gets in the center lane. I floored it because I wanted to get around him. Wasn't drunk at all. I go past his car, and as I look, he's doing this. He has his BlackBerry or iPhone on top of his steering wheel while he's going 70 miles an hour down the interstate. Now, I don't know if you read the recent study. 23 times more likely to end up in a serious auto accident if you're texting while driving versus not. Which, if you think about it, is probably more than even a drunk driver, because at least they're trying to watch the road, right? Yeah, so my wife, so I come in the house and I go, hey, hon, check it out, I got this new BlackBerry.
she's like, you're going to bring one of those in this house. You need to know two things. I see how people use these things. I go, uh-oh, here it comes. What's that, hon? She goes, number one, that thing's got an off button. I go, okay, what's number two? She goes, I tell you to use that off button. You use that off button. I went, message received loud and clear. And I considered that BlackBerry strategy number one on how to avoid those things called divorce attorneys, so I took it to heart. Now, here's the interesting thing. In today's session, I want to share with you a whole bunch of Outlook-related tips. I want to just give you a lot of tips and strategies that will expand your capabilities. And if you went into this morning's session on Taming the Email Beast, this will build on top of that. If you didn't, I've got a couple of the best email tips that I'll be sharing at the end of today's program. But the key point that I want to share with you at the start, don't try to take it all in. There's going to be too much stuff. Look for the 3, 4, 5 things that are going to work for you, and then build those into your usage of Outlook so you can get better. Because if you get 3, 4, 5 good ideas out of this next hour or so, this time in this room is well spent. You're going to get that time back and then some. The other thing I want you to do is look for 1 or 2 ideas, not for you, but for somebody around you who's driving you just a little bit crazy. Who's that person? Who's that person that never seems to be working on the right thing at the right time because they haven't ever built a good task list to figure out their day? Who's that person that maybe that that can never find their contact or the information about their contact because they didn't save it properly in the first place? And who's maybe that person that can never find what they need in their email inbox just because they've got 3,942 in there, right? So if you see that person and you see the tip that's going to help that person, don't walk up to that person after today's session and go, you should. Nobody likes that should word dropped on their head. Here's what I'd recommend you do. Up here on the front, I got these little one-sheets. This is a list of all of those little keystroke combos you can do so you don't have to move your mouse to do something. So this right here might be worth the price of admission. Grab one of these, not for you, but for that person who's driving you nuts, and go, hey, you know what? I heard this guy the other day, and you know what he said? That way they get the message from me, not from you. They might actually listen. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. What are we going to be talking about in this next hour or so? We are going to be talking a whole bunch about how to use Outlook to do a whole bunch of things for your work and your life. Now, you're going to see a whole bunch of me in here because basically I'm using Outlook as my conduit for planning pretty much everything. My calendar, my email, my contacts with other people, my notes, how to manage all of the stuff that's hitting to me and help me make good decisions with how I'm going to use my time at that time. So we're going to obviously dive in and talk about tasks and those pesky interruptions. Out of curiosity, travel industry people, you guys don't get any interruptions, right? How many of you are getting 5 or more interruptions per day? Per day? Per hour? I'm getting interruptions from my interruptions, Randy. Wait until you see what that's doing to you, and the tip we'll share on that one. How about this? We're going to talk about calendar management, schedule sanity, how to get all the junk that's been cluttering up your head for the last few years out of your head. Here's a good example. How many of you right now are thinking of all the things you could be doing right now if you weren't in this room with me right now? Yeah, see, we all got these lists in our head. I want to show you a way that you can utilize your Outlook to get that stuff out of there. And then at the end, we'll share a couple of the very best email tips. Although the one thing I will say, they did record my program, and assuming the recording came out pretty good this morning, if that's an area that you want to go in much deeper, I think they're going to make that available for purchase after the conference is over. So watch for that because it gives you a full 75 minutes of stuff. All right, so let's dive in. Now, the other thing we're going to be talking about is this, obviously. We're going to try to get you moving from using just a couple of the key functions in Outlook. You know, the big ones that everybody uses: email, calendar, contacts. That's the big ones. How many of you use the task list? Okay, how many of you have just dabbled with the task list and decided it's not worth it? Yeah, I get a few of these. By the way, how many of you make some form of a daily task list? It doesn't have to be in your Outlook. Wow, almost everybody. Did you know that that's step 1 for being diagnosed type A? That's step 1. It's not the full test. Here's the full test, all of you daily task list people. Have any of you that do your little daily task list ever done something not on your task list and then you wrote it down just so you could check it off? That's type A. Okay, so you've been diagnosed. All right. Got your notes and memos. You know, what yeah. I do it too. All right. Notes and memos. How many of you are using the notes function in Outlook? Look at that, very few. But there's some really cool capabilities, so we want to get in and show you how to use all 5 of these functions.